Awaiting orders, Servicebot here for another episode. And today, this video is something I felt was a necessary follow-up with the recent traction that my video, A New Wish, got about Ask Air, and something I brought up very briefly and cheekily about PieguyRulz.
We've all heard of how Steven Hillenburg never really wanted a reboot of SpongeBob, but ever since his late passing, Nick has capitalized on two already, with both thankfully pulling in little to no ratings.
I blame you for this. To preface this, I have no issues with PieguyRulz, and hopefully he's better off whatever endeavor he is currently pursuing, since he has no activity on the internet as of recently. So you might be asking yourself, why exactly am I making this video? Well, I feel it's best to eloquently express it through dissecting the video as is, and then delving into my thoughts as to what it means for the recent landscape of pop culture and content creation as is. So without further ado, I think it's finally time to examine this video, which happens to be the third most popular video on PieguyRulz's channel. Before we actually get into the video, I think it's extremely important for me to mention that we won't be watching the video in its entirety. We will just be cutting into the part which is the most contentious aspect and where the incendiary claims are being made.
Nickelodeon, including Brian Robbins, either waited until Steven Hillenburg passed to go through with these plans, or saw him passing as an opportunity to come up with this SpongeBob spin-off plan. It is no coincidence that only 3 months after the man passes, they announce these projects. How low and disgusting and filthy of people can you be as executives to wait before the guy who had creative integrity and a vision and rules and limits for what he wanted his property to be and not be, wait for him to die before you go ahead and make your plans to take his creation, the thing he worked hard for, and wring it out to get every last penny from?
That was a lot to take in, and I know that this person is very passionate about animation, as I am as well, which comes into a couple of factors. We know that Hillenburg is a creative and a genius for creating SpongeBob. We also perceive corporations as being greedy, soulless shells, husk of human beings, and exclusively, continuously conscientious of monetary gain, to the point where that is the holistic model in which they pursue any creative endeavor. Then we find out that this announcement comes months after Hillenburg has passed, along with the person corroborating what is being said here to be someone who worked in the OG series, who has strong connections and ties to it, announcing on social media that people who have been working on the series know that Hillenburg would have been against the creation of this particular series.
And what confirms for me that Nickelodeon is disrespecting Hillenburg's legacy is Paul Tibbitt, the guy who was there from the very start of SpongeBob, who worked very closely with Steven Hillenburg, who took the reins from Hillenburg after he left after the first movie and continued to work on the show through season 9 when Hillenburg came back. That Paul Tibbitt tweeted out this message. I do not mean any disrespect to my colleagues who are working on this show. They are good people and talented artists, but this is some greedy, lazy executiving right here, and they all know full well Steve would have hated this. Shame on them. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for confirming this. Thank you so very much for confirming what seemed to be a disgusting situation.
I established that groundwork for a couple of reasons. Due to these preconceived notions of how we look at artists and companies, it's natural to look at this tweet as confirmation bias. However, we need to be mindful of a couple of things. Paul Tibbitt stopped working on SpongeBob after season 9. For those who are unaware, SpongeBob season 9 came out 2012, and the last known episode for Steven Hillenburg to have been working on was Pineapple VR, due to Vincent, who had talked about it via Twitter. This is important for a couple of reasons. Understanding that season 9 came out 2012 and the most recent one obviously was around 2018, this would have meant that the most recent people who had been working and the staff that had been there for 6 years. and this was 6 years apart from any involvement that Paul Tibbitt had with the series in general. I'm not doing this to just simply flog PieguyRulz.
Maybe disrespecting the legacy of the late series creator Steven Hillenburg. Now, of course, as fans, it's almost impossible to know his exact stance on SpongeBob spin-offs, but doing a little digging into some old interviews, there's one from 2009 where he was asked about potential spin-offs. This show is about SpongeBob, he's the core element, and it's about how he relates to the other characters. Patrick by himself might be a bit too much, so I don't see any spin-offs.
Beyond the Vincent statement, these were things that were easily researchable. Things that would have told PieguyRulz that the person who's stating this and making these declarations about what Hillenburg would have wanted should have, at the very least, been called into question, considering he's more than 6 years removed from the series. By this logic alone, you are saying that these people serve less as an authority than a person who is 6 years removed from the IP in general. Beyond this, he just kind of pontificates for a long period of time about the moral erroneous nature and the depravity of doing an action like that, and I can accept him going on his diatribe if it were true. I told you this would be an extremely brief video, but you might be asking yourself, why make this video if you've already expressed yourself at length in another video? Well, because this is still being treated as a factual basis to make a video on. Recently I saw a video made by The Laser who perpetuate the same falsehoods within their own video, stating that Hillenburg never wanted a spinoff despite the fact that the quotes they're reading from say that they don't see any in the future.
Some of the comments from Steven Hillenburg, so I typed this in Google and it says, does Steven Hillenburg not want a SpongeBob spinoff? For context, Steven Hillenburg was strongly against spinoffs and against SpongeBob's character. The first spinoff to be announced is a combination of everything he did not want. He didn't want any of his characters to be babies or anything. Camp Coral, which will feature a 10-year-old SpongeBob and his kid friends. Another comment here, at the beginning, people gave you notes and you have to fight back. It was like a new show and no one knew if it was a new show at work. Nick had decided if they didn't want any more animal shows and they wanted stories with kids. Like Hey Arnold, they actually wanted to make Hey Arnold Under the Sea and make SpongeBob a child, which is something Steven Hillenburg did not want. And here's this thing that he said here, I said no, that's not the show. Final comment, the show is about SpongeBob, he's the core element, and it's about how he relates to the other characters. Patrick by himself may be a bit too much, so I don't see any spin-offs. You see what I mean when I say that Nickelodeon is disrespecting Steven Hillenburg? I said that because he never wanted spin-offs. He never wanted Baby SpongeBob. He never wanted any of this extended media.
And mind you, even if we grant everything, this was stated in 2009. You don't believe someone could have changed their thoughts in 9 years? Throughout his video, this taints the lens in which he evaluates this content.
Season 4, where Gary got taken away, which it was reused, awful versions of these characters, the pacing was super dragging, and the zombie scenes and the human scenes, and there was just so much stuff in here that didn't feel like SpongeBob, and it just overall felt like something that Nickelodeon was trying to do because of executive decision.
Would he enjoyed it more with this notion not preloaded into his cortex about how he would evaluate the SpongeBob IPs going forward? I don't know, but I do believe that it might have impacted his ability to review this thing just by purely entertainment basis. I would certainly be negatively impacted if I believed that these contents and these creations were a byproduct that were against the original creator's wishes. And even now we see this occurring with shows like Velma.
So what if I told you this Scooby is a black girl who's in a romantic relationship with Shaggy? Or should I say Norville? People are taking it at face value, which is probably a testament to the quality of Velma that we all just believed this. I believed it at first, but I can 100% guarantee that this image was formulated for the sole purpose of stirring up controversy. The reason we can't see whoever sent this message is probably because the person who made it is messaging themselves.
Regardless of how much you dislike or like the creator, there is no need for us to spread misinformation about these creations, and more importantly, how confirmation bias and negativity bias plays into how it creates this factual world and an alternative reality. People don't even seem to fact check these ideas. Rather, the idea that Scooby is going to be a female becomes something that is propagated by the rest of the internet, treated as true not because of the compelling amount of corroborating evidence, but due to the animosity that the show has garnered, the ire from simply disliking the execution. Even the audience at home, I know you found yourself at one point or another saying the following, I'm not sure if that is true, but I can imagine that being the case because of this person I don't like, or having some sort of negative experience to the person and contributing that to the legitimacy of other actions and behaviors. Sometimes it's important to remove yourself from a situation, circumstance, or personal feelings about an idea to evaluate it in earnest, and that's what I want to divulge to the audience and endow them with this particular video. But that's everything for me. I'm Aegis Axel, the Servicebot, awaiting further orders. But until next time, peace.